She looked away. "You're crossing a line," I whispered. "Only if you let me." Her voice had been nothing but a murmur, yet it cut through the air like a spark in a dark room. I'd been standing too close, too long, waiting for her to glance back at me. When she finally did, the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, not quite a warning. I couldn't tell which one of us had crossed the invisible line first. We were alone in the studio after everyone else had left. Late lights slanted through the tall windows, dust hanging in gold flecks between us. She was packing up her notes with slow, precise fingers. I was pretending to scroll my phone, thumb motionless on the screen. The silence was soft, but it had weight. She's older, I reminded myself, mid-40s, poised in a way that made every gesture deliberate. Her hair had slipped out of its clip and fell along her jaw, and she pushed it back absent-mindedly, exposing the faintest trace of perfume that didn't belong to the day. I caught it when she moved past me to the door, something like cedar, like orange peel warmed by skin. My chest tightened with a feeling I didn't have words for. "Still here?" she asked without looking up. Her tone was light, but not careless. "Yeah," I said. "Forgot my jacket." The lie came out too quick. She stopped, hand hovering over her bag, and gave me a small glance. "It's warm out," she said. "You don't need a jacket." I shrugged. Guess I just didn't want to rush out. My voice trailed off. The truth was all over my face, and she must have seen it because her eyes softened, then sharpened again, like she was bracing herself. She turned back to the desk. "You shouldn't linger," she murmured, almost to herself. I moved closer without planning to, just enough that our reflections overlapped in the dark window pane. Her fingers brushed against mine when she reached for a pen. It wasn't an accident, but it wasn't deliberate either. Neither of us pulled away immediately. Heat flared between our knuckles. Her breath caught. I heard it more than saw it. She straightened, spine rigid, and still didn't look at me. "You're crossing a line," she said, so quietly it could have been mistaken for the wind rattling the glass. "Only if you let me," I whispered before I could stop myself. The words hung there, trembling like a loose thread. She turned her head a fraction, eyes flicking to my mouth, and then away. The gold light was fading, leaving the room cooler, shadows stretching. I could see a tremor in her hands as she capped the pen and set it down. She finally looked at me, really looked, and the distance between us felt both small and endless. Her lips parted as if to speak, then pressed together again. The silence deepened, dense as velvet. I opened my mouth to say something else, but the click of the outer door echoed through the hallway, shattering the stillness. Someone was coming back in. Her eyes widened, a flush climbing her throat. She stepped back, and the space between us became air again. The door to the studio creaked, and a shadow crossed the threshold. The door shut again, and footsteps faded down the hall. She exhaled, a sound between relief and frustration, and pressed her palm flat against the desk as if steadying herself. "I shouldn't be here this late," she said, voice low but clipped. "Neither should you." I took a half step back. "I know. Sorry." She gathered her things quickly now, but her movements weren't smooth. A folder slipped from her hands and scattered papers onto the floor. I crouched to help. Our fingers met on the same sheet, then hesitated. She withdrew first, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Old habits," she murmured. "I always end up cleaning up after someone." It wasn't a joke. There was a tremor under the words, and it stayed with me as I stacked the papers. I'd heard pieces about her. Divorced, one grown daughter overseas, a long career that left little space for anything else. I'd never asked. Directly. She never offered more than surface facts. Yet every time she lingered at the edge of a group, I caught glimpses. Her hand resting too long on an empty coffee cup. The way she left a meeting first but walked the slowest down the hall. "Did you always work this hard?" I asked before I could stop myself. She gave a short laugh. "I didn't plan on it. Life just fills the space you leave open." She glanced at me. "You still have time not to make the same mistake." I swallowed, unsure how to answer. She was twice my age. I was supposed to be the one unsteady, but her warning made me feel protective instead. We both stood at the same moment. She brushed past me toward the door, her shoulder grazing mine. Light, accidental, yet charged. The scent of her perfume mixed with paper and dust. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said without turning around. "I'm not." I started then stopped. My pulse thudded in my neck. She finally faced me, arms crossed. People talk. They always do. And I don't. She trailed off, eyes flicking to the window where the city glowed in blue evening light. I don't want to be someone's mistake. I don't think you could be, I said quietly. Her expression faltered, softened, then rebuilt itself. She stepped closer, reaching for the papers I still held. Her fingers closed over mine to take them, but for a heartbeat, she didn't pull away. Her thumb brushed my knuckle, a small, unthinking circle. We both froze. Outside, a siren passed. Its wail swelled and faded, leaving the room wrapped in hush. Her hand was still on mine, her breath close enough to stir the collar of my shirt. Neither of us spoke. And then, almost imperceptibly, she let her grip linger instead of retreating. The papers slipped from our hands and floated to the floor, forgotten between our shoes. The papers lay scattered on the floor, white squares against the dark wood. Neither of us bent to pick them up. The air between us had grown dense, like a held breath. Her hand slipped from mine at last. She stepped back, smoothing her blouse as though nothing had happened. "You should go," she whispered. Her eyes didn't match her voice. They stayed on my mouth for a fraction too long. I nodded, but didn't move. A vibration broke the silence, her phone buzzing inside her bag. She turned sharply, fumbling for it. "It's my daughter," she muttered, thumb hesitating over the screen. She didn't answer. The sound stopped, leaving a faint echo in the room. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine." She tucked the phone away, shoulders stiff. "It's late." I crouched to gather the papers, buying time. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't mean to make things complicated." She knelt too, close enough that her knee brushed mine. "It already is." Our faces were level now, the shadows softening the lines of hers. She smelled of citrus and coffee and something like rain. Her fingers trembled as she reached for another page. Mine brushed the back of her hand. This time she didn't pull away. A noise in the hallway, footsteps, a muffled laugh. We both froze. She leaned closer instinctively, her hair falling across my cheek. The door handle rattled, then went still. Whoever it was walked on. We exhaled at the same time, a silent laugh of nerves. "This isn't," she began. "I know," I said. "We shouldn't." Her eyes met mine, searching. "People will think." She broke off, biting her lower lip. "You don't know what it's like to be watched." "I do," I said, softer than I meant. Maybe not the same way, but I do. We stayed crouched on the floor, our knees touching, hands still tangled in loose papers. Her breath brushed against my skin when she spoke again, just a whisper. "We're not doing anything." "Not yet," I whispered back before thinking. A flicker crossed her face. Fear, want, something else. She straightened, but not far. We rose together, our bodies almost aligned. My shoulder grazed hers as we stood. She turned, half away, half toward me. Our reflection in the window looked like a single shape. She reached for the desk to steady herself. Her hand found my arm instead. A small, unthinking grip. My heart pounded against her palm. Outside, a car horn burst, then faded. Inside, it was only our breathing and the faint tick of a wall clock. Her thumb traced an absent circle on my sleeve before she realized and drew back. But she didn't let go entirely. We stood there, caught between retreat and something else, her fingers still clutching my arm as if neither of us wanted to be the first to break the spell. The office felt too small for both of us now. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat. She still had her hand on my arm. "I can't keep doing this," she said at last. Her voice cracked on the last word. "Doing what?" I asked, though I knew. She let go, pressed her fingers to her temples, then turned away toward the window. "Pretending you're just another student, another colleague. Pretending I don't notice you noticing me." I stepped closer. "I never wanted to make you uncomfortable." She shook her head, a sharp movement that sent a strand of hair across her cheek. "You don't make me uncomfortable," she whispered. "That's the problem." I reached out before I could stop myself, brushing that stray strand back from her face. My knuckles grazed her skin. She didn't flinch. Her eyes closed for a second, then opened again, darker now. "You're too young," she said, but softer. "This is madness." I leaned in just enough to catch the scent of her, citrus, paper, warm skin. "Then tell me to go," I said. "And I'll go." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her hands gripped the windowsill as though she needed it to stay upright. "I'm not some bored kid," I said, my voice low near her ear. "I think about you when I'm not here. I wait for these moments." Her shoulders trembled under my words. She turned, finally facing me, and for the first time her guard cracked wide open. "Do you know what they'd say about me?" she asked. The whispers, the looks, how fast they'd turn me into a story. "I don't care what they say." She gave a short, painful laugh. "You will. You're 24. You still believe things don't leave scars." I stepped closer anyway. Her back touched the window now, the city lights behind her like scattered stars. My hand hovered at her hip, not touching yet. She tilted her head back slightly, lips parted, breathing uneven. "I've spent years being careful," she said. "Years making sure no one could ever," she trailed off. I closed the last inch between us, my forehead almost against hers. "Tell me to stop," I murmured. Her eyes searched mine. She didn't say it. Instead, her hands lifted, uncertain, then rested lightly against my chest, fingers splayed as if testing the warmth there. The room had gone silent, but for our breathing. My thumb brushed the edge of her jaw. Her pulse beat under my touch. She leaned in a fraction, enough that her breath ghosted over my lips. And then, from the hallway, a door slammed. Footsteps quick, approaching. She startled, but didn't move away. Her hands only pressed harder against my chest. Between us hung one heartbeat of decision, a kiss suspended, a bold line waiting to be spoken. The footsteps passed, the door down the hall closed, and the building settled back into its after-hours hush. We stayed frozen, her palms still against my chest. Then she dropped her hands as though burned. "We can't," she whispered. "I have to tell you something." Her tone was different now, steadier but hollow. She moved past me to the desk, keeping her back turned. "It's not just the age difference," she said. "It's where you are, who you are." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She picked up her phone, thumb hovering. "You applied for the residency, didn't you? The fellowship next semester." "Yeah," I said slowly. "Why?" She turned. "I'm on the selection committee." I blinked. "What?" "I didn't know it was you at first," she said quickly. "Your application came through weeks ago under a different department. I only realized tonight, reading the short list, that it's you." The revelation hung between us like static. I felt heat rise to my face. "So all this time." "I never planned this," she cut in. "I've been careful not to touch anything, not to bias anything. But if someone finds out," she trailed off, shaking her head. "It's not just whispers. It's my job. Your future." I stepped back, running a hand over my mouth. The room tilted a little. "That's why you kept pulling away." Her eyes glistened. "I tried. But then you kept looking at me like that." I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was the strange closeness of her confession. She wasn't just worried about herself. She was protecting me too. I crossed the room slowly. She didn't move. "You could have told me," I said, voice low. "I wanted to," she whispered. "Every time. But then you'd smile. And she broke off, trembling hands clutching her phone as if it were a shield. I reached out, not quite touching her. "And now." She inhaled sharply, eyes flicking to my hand hovering inches from her shoulder. She stepped toward me anyway, so that my fingers brushed the sleeve of her blouse. A light, electric contact. "This makes it worse," she said, but her voice faltered. "Or clearer," I murmured. She closed her eyes. "I have to recuse myself from the committee. It's the only way." The decision sounded like it hurt to speak. She opened her eyes again, and for the first time there was no guard at all, only raw, unhidden want and fear. "You'd do that for me?" I asked. She nodded once, then stepped even closer, brushing past me on her way to the door. Her shoulder grazed my arm, a shiver of contact that lingered. At the threshold she paused, half-turned, breath uneven. "If I do this," she said, "there's no going back." And for the first time, she didn't sound like she wanted to. The corridor outside had gone quiet again. She still stood at the threshold, hand on the doorframe, as though it might hold her up. Her last words, "No going back," hung between us, heavier than the silence. I crossed the room before I had time to think. "Wait." My voice was a rasp. She turned. Her eyes were shining, but her face was unreadable. "You don't have to," I said. "If stepping away keeps you safe." Her breath caught. "I'm tired of being safe," she murmured. I stopped just in front of her. We were inches apart now, close enough for the faint warmth of her body to bleed into mine. The scent of rain on her hair, paper on her fingers, citrus on her skin, all of it swirled up, dizzying. "I meant what I said," she whispered. If I recuse myself, I lose a project I've built for 10 years. And you lose the cover of innocence. People will say you got in because of me, or didn't because of me. I don't care, I said. Not if it means we stop pretending. Her shoulders dropped, as though something in her had been waiting to hear that. She leaned back against the door, eyes closing for a heartbeat. I've been alone a long time, she said quietly. It becomes a habit. You forget what it's like to want. I reached up, slowly, and brushed my thumb along the edge of her jaw. Her eyes opened. She didn't move away. You're shaking, I murmured. So are you, she replied. For a moment we just stood like that, her back to the door, my hand cupping her face, both of us breathing shallowly. Her palm found my chest again, fingers curling in the fabric of my shirt as though to anchor herself. If we do this, she said, voice almost gone, we live with the fallout. We live with people's eyes. We don't get to undo it. I know, I said. Tell me to leave, and I will. She stared at me for a long second. The hallway clock ticked once, twice. Then she shook her head, a small, decisive movement. Stay. The word was so soft I almost missed it. But it was there. Her forehead came to rest against mine. Not a kiss yet, but a surrender of distance. Her breath slid over my lips, warm and unsteady. Her hands moved from my chest to my shoulders, holding, not pulling. Everything else fell away. The fellowship, the age gap, the risks. It was just her eyes on mine, open, unhidden. In that quiet, on the edge of something irreversible, I understood her fully for the first time. The fear, the hunger, the courage it took to stop being careful. And she, looking back at me, saw all of mine. The clock had stopped ticking in my head. We were still at the door, our foreheads touching, breathing the same thin strip of air. Outside, the city lights blinked and rose like quiet witnesses. She drew back just enough to see my face. You're sure? She said. Not a question, more like a test. I'm sure, I whispered. Her hands slipped from my shoulders to my wrists, holding them lightly, almost reverently. I've been afraid for so long, she admitted. Afraid of wanting. Afraid of being seen. I was afraid you'd never look at me, I said. Something changed in her then, a softening, but not a retreat. She let go of my wrists and instead laced her fingers through mine. They fit there without ceremony, warm, solid. We moved back into the room and sat on the edge of the desk, still holding hands. She leaned against me, her head resting against my shoulder. The scent of her hair was all oranges and rain, and her weight felt like an answer. I've spent years pretending I didn't need anyone, she murmured. I thought I was protecting myself. Maybe I was just hiding. I turned my face slightly, brushed my lips to her temple, a kiss that was more promise than possession. I don't want to hide, I said. She smiled, small and wry, but her eyes stayed soft. Then we won't. We'll take whatever comes. We sat like that for a long moment, the papers still scattered on the floor, our fingers intertwined. No perfect speeches, no grand declarations, just her thumb drawing circles on the back of my hand and my arm draped loosely around her waist. The risks were still real. People would talk. The fellowship might be complicated. But in the quiet of the after-hours room, those things felt smaller than they had. What felt big was the calm between us, the fact that she wasn't pulling away anymore. You're shaking less, I said finally. I'm still shaking, she replied, smiling against my shoulder. But now it's from something else. I squeezed her hand. She tilted her head back to look at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, her expression held no hesitation. Just warmth, a little humor, and something tender that made my chest ache. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, we stayed still, a small, fragile bubble of quiet, two people who had stopped pretending. I lifted her hand to my lips and kissed it. She closed her eyes and exhaled, a sound like relief. Whatever came next, we were no longer circling each other from a distance. We were sitting together at last, the space between us gone. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?